The average consumer has no idea what a small producer goes through to get a bottle on the local liquor store shelves for you to purchase. The system is set up to reward laziness, and it is affecting consumers. And if you want to hear about it, then stick around. So let me give you a little bit of a background so that this will make a little bit more sense. For those of you who haven't watched my channel before, you don't know who I am. My name's Randy Sullivan. I am the host of the Bourbon Real Talk podcast, but I also co-founded this brand, the Prideful Goat, and I'm responsible for setting up distribution agreements, and I'm responsible for the ongoing communications with wholesalers. I'm responsible for creating new offerings for the brand, limited time offerings, or something that's pretty important for small brands like mine, just to stay relevant, because let's face it, you whiskey nerds don't drink the same thing every day, and you're always looking for a shiny new nickel, so if I don't produce one, you don't always buy the brand. And wholesaler support is essential for a small brand to grow. So let's talk about why that is and how the system is set up. So if you don't know, we in the United States, since Prohibition, have been operating under what we call the three-tier system. The first tier is what we would call the producer. So they're the person who bottles or produces the whiskey, sometimes referred to as a supplier. The second tier is a representative in each state called a wholesaler, sometimes referred to as a distributor. My understanding is like in some states, those terms mean different things. Like in Texas, a wholesaler sells liquor, but a distributor sells beer. I don't know how true that is. Someone told me that at one point. But generally speaking, the terms are used interchangeably with one another. And then the third tier would be retailers. And that would be your local liquor store. Now, in some states, there's a fourth tier because the retailers sell to what we call on-premise, and those are locations that when you buy your alcohol, you have to drink it there before you leave, bars and restaurants. And retailers are what you call off-premise. You can buy your alcohol there, but you are not allowed to drink it there. And of course, there are different rules in all the different states and so on and so forth. And in some states, the retailers sell to on-premise. In some states, the wholesalers sell both to the on and off-premise accounts. So let's not get bogged down by that, but those are your three tiers: producer, wholesaler, retailer. So with a few rare exceptions, producers are generally not allowed to sell their product directly to retailers or on-premise accounts, okay? The law requires them to have a wholesaler in each state, again, with some rare exceptions. And just so you understand what everybody's interest is at these three tiers, producers generally shoot for about 35% margin on product, which calculated is about 54% markup on cost. And wholesalers generally make about 30% margin on product or 43% markup on cost. And this means that generally speaking, wholesalers make more money per bottle than the producer does. And that's often a shocking statistic for whiskey consumers because they had no idea that the person that worked hard to create that brand and to either source the whiskey or age, produce and age the whiskey and bottle it, that they make less money per bottle than everybody else in the food chain. But that is the reality of the situation. And pricing structure is theoretically justified. And the reason why is because the wholesale tier is supposed to be responsible for both selling the product and the logistics of moving the product around. So from a functional standpoint, if the producer only has to focus on making and bottling the product, but somebody else has to come pick it up from the warehouse, they have to take it to their state, they have to store it, they have to have sales staff that are going to go out to all of the potential, what they call points of distribution or pods, and get those people interested in buying the product. Then they have to load it on a truck and they have to send it out there and then they have to follow up and all that stuff. That it's fair that somebody doing all of that work could make a little bit of extra money over the producer. Now we know that it is a heavy price to pay because there are some beer distributors who only do the logistics portion, and they charge a fraction of the price of what full service wholesalers charge because they don't have the responsibility of the sales. And that is why RNDC got fired by Sazerac, because Sazerac figured out, hey, we really don't need all of these sales services. We just need somebody who's going to deliver the product, because all of our product is already pre-sold. We already have brand reps in the market. And so, that was a very interesting move by Sazerac. But if you're a small brand like mine and you don't have the resources to have sales in every market and you're not so well known, then you really need your wholesaler to do that part of the job. So why did I fire my California wholesaler? I went there for a market visit personally, and the market visit was very well planned. The sales reps were professional. They had excellent contacts in the market. We had appointments. We would go in, we would meet with people, and they even set it up so I could do some single barrel presentations. So I brought single barrel samples with me, and I'd sit down with the decision maker, let them try it. And we actually placed 2 different single barrels with 2 different Total Wine locations. And that was, a pretty exciting thing. And I thought, man, this wholesaler is doing a good job. But then I got home from the market visit, and that's when the trouble started to begin. The first thing I did when I got home was I confirmed that they wanted me to bottle the 2 Total Wine single barrels. And I also confirmed with them what they wanted on the side sticker that we put on single barrels. And typically it says who picked it, or what it was picked for, or something like that. And I confirmed the verbiage on the stickers before we printed anything or we bottled. 4 days later, the owner of the wholesaler confirmed not only that he wanted both barrels bottled, but that the sticker was accurate. Then, over the next few weeks, the owner was copied on 5 different emails coordinating the bottling of those 2 barrels. And after the bottling, he informed the bottling team that, in fact, the sticker information was wrong, that he never read that part of the email, even though he confirmed that everything in my email was accurate, and that he needed them to cut open all of the cases, pull all the bottles out, pull all the stickers off, and re-sticker it with a new sticker, which we did. And so once all of that was complete, I sent a request and said, okay, send us your purchase order. He declined and said that Total Wine wasn't ready to take possession of the barrels because they had too many barrels coming all at once, and that he needed us to wait a couple of months. So after a couple of months, I started following up. Multiple emails would be sent, multiple voicemails would be left, and he would give no response. Eventually, I asked him to just order the barrels and let him warehouse them until Total Wine was ready, and he declined and said that he couldn't tie up that much capital in inventory with no date in sight from Total Wine, which was an ironic thing for him to say, because I'm a small producer. Why would I have the capital to sit on these barrels? Once we pull the barrels out of the aging warehouse and bottle them, we have to pay the excise tax. And we're just sitting on inventory that, we thought that we were getting rid of. And he was like, no, you carry the cost of my mistake. I'm not going to carry the cost of my mistake. So I keep following up, often no response. And eventually it was relayed to us that there's been some changes in the Total Wine barrel program and that they didn't want the barrels anymore. And he asked me to place the barrels with somebody else that we had already bottled and stickered twice. So I'm kind of like, that doesn't seem right, because when I was there in market, you told me that you were going to sell 7 or 8 barrels across the state. The part I didn't tell you was, right when we first got started, I sold 2 barrels in the state. Whenever I gave him samples after he told me he was going to place 7 or 8, he only placed 1. And so in my mind, he's got all of this additional sales capacity that he could use to move these 2 Total Wine barrels that Total Wine didn't want anymore. And I asked him, look, just find some new buyers for the barrels. And he said, well, send me samples. Our distillery has a policy that we don't break open a full case of whiskey because we can't ship it after we break it open, and we'd be left with 5 bottles. And so we asked him, just order 1 case of each of the 2 barrels that you asked for us to bottle for Total Wine, and then you can take the bottles out, place the barrels, and then you can sell the individual bottles to whoever purchases them, because that's totally normal for you to do. It took a while. But he did finally agree to purchase 1 case of each, so he'd had samples. 6 weeks go by with me, emailing him and I couldn't text him. I didn't have his cell phone number, but leaving him voicemail messages on his work phone, just trying to get him to send me a purchase order for the thing he had already agreed to buy. Now, keep in mind, at this point, we're already have been sitting on these barrels for, I don't know, somewhere around 6 months. And he broke off all communication. And he finally sends the PO after I hound him. And then after he sends the PO, it takes me 6 weeks of following up with him every 3 to 5 days, calling my rep, because I'm dealing with the owner of the company, but I'm calling my rep and I'm going, man, what's going on? I need your help on this. You help get me in this situation. And he's like, look, I don't have the authority to solve this problem. And all of that was just to get, after he gave me the PO, all of that 6 weeks of work was just to get him to schedule pickup. Just so you normally know, it is very common for me to get a PO, me to send it to my office, them to process the order the next day and request what's called a bill of lading, and for the product to be picked up the very next day. It took me 6 weeks to get a PO, following up every 3 to 5 days, and then another 6 weeks just to get him to pick up the product, right? And then after all of that, and I reached out to him and I complained about the situation, he literally said to me, you were overzealous and you bottled this because you're a small producer and you were too eager to sell the barrels. And I literally had to copy and paste back to him his email message where he requested that we bottle these 2 barrels for Total Wine. Then the limited time offer issue started, because right at the end of this process, when we were trying to get him to pick up these, cases, we reached out to him weeks before we released our new 8-year rye and our new rum finish rye. And we said, hey, we have new limited time offers. They're really important for our brand. We need to re-energize our base. We need you to pick some up. And we started asking him, like, how many cases do you think that you're going to need for the state based on, how well sales are going and, the accounts that you're working with on our behalf? And again, we'd have to send multiple requests for updates with no response. Sometimes he'd respond, but he wouldn't really address the issue. He would just say like some generic stuff. And eventually I started mocking him in my requests for updates by numbering the number of times that I had requested that he answer this question, right? And my rep was being copied on it, and the accountant was being copied on it that processes the POs. And I think that finally motivated him to go, okay, well, now I'm starting to look silly because everyone can see that I won't even respond to this customer that we are responsible for representing in the state. And he finally gave me a deadline, and he basically indicated he wasn't even sure if he wanted to bring in the limited time offers, which is unacceptable for a wholesaler because there's no other way for me to grow my brand in the state if you're not going to offer my products. I didn't ask him to buy a bunch that was going to put him at risk. I just wanted him to have some in the state so that we could get some distributed and you all out there that are watching would be able to get a hold of it. But he gave himself a deadline and he said, I'm going to reach out to you by Tuesday, end of business. And so when he didn't do that, I was fed up. And at about 9 o'clock at night, after I knew that they were closed, I sent him a message and I fired him. And it felt good. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of problems that are like that you as a consumer may not know. And since wholesalers basically have a government monopoly on the, distribution of spirits in the United States, I mean, there is a whole fight that the brands that you love are going through that you probably don't even know that they're fighting. And wholesalers have developed this kind of business practice of signing up a bunch of producers. They have no ability or inclination to even do the job that they're signing up for. All they have to do is get the person signed up, ignore their responsibilities, and wait to see which producers are going to go do the sales portion for them. And then they get paid for doing the sales and logistics, and all they have to do effectively is deliver the product. And if it isn't a product that they can't just sit back and take call-in orders for, they typically don't work for that brand. And they just ignore normal business communications with the smaller producers. So that's kind of the way that the system, works. And the only solution, if you're a small producer and you don't have the power of a Tito's or a big whiskey brand, is you have to find a wholesaler who's actually willing to do what they say they're going to do. And this is why you as a consumer should have great respect for any small brand that has made it to your liquor store shelves, because they fought a battle and they won. And so now I'd like to ask you all out there for help, because I no longer have a wholesaler in California, and I would like to be able to get my products to the people who love the Prideful Goat in that state. So if you're in the industry, or you know someone who's in the industry in California, I would like for you to help to refer me to a new wholesaler or wholesalers in the state. It's actually legal to have more than one wholesaler in California. So it could be a situation where we have somebody in the north and the south or whatever. But let me tell you what I'm looking for. I want somebody who operates with integrity, who follows through with what they say they're going to do, who communicates, who'll actually present my products to new points of distribution, somebody who will follow up with past points of distribution and see how, if they've run out of product. It happens all the time. I go into a liquor store that we place product in, and they go, "Oh, I ran out a while back ago, but I've never heard from the rep that represents you." I need somebody to follow up with those accounts, and I want somebody who will work with the point of distribution that the product isn't moving to help them find solutions so that the brand will move for them, right? I need somebody who's proactive and lets me know when there's a problem and suggests solutions, because we're open to getting involved and helping. And I want somebody who understands the value of re-energizing a small brand with new special offers. So we are willing to do our part. If you're industry out there, or you're thinking of referring me to somebody that you know, we're willing to do market visits and attend general sales meetings and doing in-store tastings and meet the maker events. We'll email our database of local customers to get the support out. We'll promote on our social media. I'll promote on my podcast. And we even have a program coming out to get some brand ambassador support in local markets. So we'll be able to do in-store tastings and things like that, just to provide a little bit of support for our wholesalers to make it a little bit easier. And all that'll be on the Prideful Goat's dime. So if you know a wholesaler who you think would be a good fit, even if they don't cover the entire state, please put me in contact with them. You can find contact information in the video description, or you can simply email me at randy@bourbonrealtalk.com. So let's give something away. I think that what we're going to do, because this is all about the Prideful Goat, is we are going to give away a full sample pack of everything that we've ever released. So that's going to be on our bourbon side, the 15-year, which has been sold out for a couple of years now, our 6-year bourbon, which still should be available on shelves, our 2 limited time offers, which would be our 8-year rye and our rum finish rye, and our standard 6-year rye product. So there's going to be 5 samples in the pack. They're going to be 1-ounce samples, and we're going to have 4 winners, okay? And so this is going to be kind of a big giveaway for us. We're going to have 4 winners. And if you're a winner of one of these, you'll end up with 5 ounces of whiskey, which is probably too much to drink in one setting. So hopefully you will share it with a friend and enjoy the Prideful Goat products on me. I want to remind you that if you want to support this channel, we do have our Patreon group. There's a lot of great member benefits in there. We have our merchandise site, which is whiskey products made by whiskey people for whiskey people at bourbonrealtalk.com. And I am a real estate agent in the Dallas and Houston metro areas. You can find links for all of that stuff in the video description below. And if this is your first time tuning in, I'd love to tell you a little bit about our show philosophy. We're all about bringing people together around spirits, and that's something that's important to me because I lost my brother to suicide in 2014. And I saw the connective power of whiskey. And so I built Bourbon Real Talk community to foster, healthy and connective communication between whiskey enthusiasts. And that's been a huge success for us. And we saw that it was necessary because there is a lot of hate and trolls out there on the internet. And those trolls taught us, yes, we need to create Bourbon Real Talk, but they also taught us that if those people can hate strangers online, there's nothing that keeps us from loving strangers online. And that's why we end every episode the same way, and that's this. If you woke up this morning and you're unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk.